This is 5-year-old me. 1978, when my family immigrated from Guatemala to the US. My parents were in their early 30s, spoke no English, didn't have jobs, had 3 children with one on the way, and to top it off, we were undocumented. And as you can see from this photo, which by the way, this was not an unusual look for me. This is what all my childhood photos look like. I was a little bit serious, anxious, shy, and I was a protector of my mama. Now, in spite of all my insecurities, even at that age, I always was a truth teller, or a tattletale, as my brothers and sisters would say, and a truth seeker. Now, I never imagined that I'd go from being this once undocumented, shy, little anxious girl to now a hyper-documented professor at Loyola University. So I just used a word, hyper-documented. Hyper-documentation is a word that I made up. Because that's what academics get to do. They get to make stuff up. And I've been hyper-documenting all my life. Since I was 5, I was filling out forms for my parents. When we had checks, remember checks? You used to have to sign them and write them out. I was the cultural broker at hospitals for my parents. Then in elementary school, I was hoarding some more documents, achievement awards, perfect attendance awards, straight A report cards, you name it, I had it. I was building up all of my documents. And then after high school, I thought, all right, let's keep on with these documents. So I ended up going to Berkeley, undergrad. Then I got my master's at Stanford. Then I got my PhD at the University of Texas at Austin. So, I was accumulating papers and personal statements and letters of recommendation and scholarships and fellowships and you name it. But I didn't want to stop there. Instead, I decided I'll become an academic. And then I'll just hoard a bunch more papers. So I did that. I started hoarding my journal articles, my book chapters, and now my very first book, where I talk about the joy and the heartache of being undocumented. James Baldwin says, "You think your pain and heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world. But then you read. It was books that taught me that the things that tormented me most were the very things that connected me with all the people who were alive, who had ever been alive. Think about that. The very thing that torments you the most is what actually connects you to people. The thing that we hide is actually the thing that we should reveal." And for me, being once undocumented was what once tormented me. But now, it's what connects me to my undocumented students, and it's what's connecting me to you right now. This is my mama, holding my very first published book, but I use the term "my" very lightly. Because as we know, especially if you're from a marginalized community, when you accomplish something, it's never individual. It's always communal. It's always about familia. It's always about comunidad and our ancestors. So this book is really hers. Because had my mama not been born into the poverty of rural Guatemala, had my mama not endured what only a Guatemalan undocumented mother of 6 knows, had my mama had a sliver of the opportunities I've had, you know she would have written her book long ago. Long ago. So in this book, I tell my truth and the truth of undocumented students. But here's the thing about telling your truth. First, you have to believe that your truth is worth telling. Second, you have to believe that people are going to want to read about your truth. Essentially, to document your truth, you have to believe that you are worthy of telling your truth. So you might think, since I have hyper-documentation tendencies, that as I wrote this book, I was enjoying every second of it. Just typing away every page, not even close. With every page of that book, there is imposter syndrome drenching in the pages. Some days I thought, I'm not important enough. Other days I thought, I'm not smart enough. Other days I thought, 3 people are going to read this. What's the point? But I did it. Why? Because in the back of my mind, I had that picture of my mama. And I knew that this was not just my doing. I had an obligation to my mama, to my family, to my community, to the 2 million American dreamers out there, to the so-called caravan of immigrants from Central America who are just escaping the poverty and the duress that this country has created for them. But this book also belongs to Loyola University, because it's been at Loyola where I've been literally given the stage to tell my truth, to document my truth. It's no accident that here is where I felt worthy enough to publish this book. Here I have found my people, mi gente, right? Folks, students, staff, and faculty that are really social justice driven, that really want to make a difference in the world. It's been here at Loyola where I think I've truly become a person for others, where I've been not only able to tell my story, but supported in relaying it. So, hear me when I say this. Your truth is waiting to be told. You can't leave this auditorium today without knowing that I've told you this. You must document your story, because your story is not just your story. It's your family's story, it's your community's story, it's your ancestor's story. You are entitled to tell your truth. For those of us who rarely or never see ourselves represented in text, we have been schooled, educated, socialized to think that we're not even worthy of the pages that it would take to write those stories. Well, let me tell you right now, I am officiating every single one of you to document your story. You have my permission. So do it, because I said so. Your truth, my truth, and the truth of undocumented students and undocumented people are worthy of documentation. And at Loyola, you can be your own narrator. You can tell your truth. And as I've experienced, you can live your truth. Henry Thoreau, an educational philosopher, says the following: if we are going to fight for and with the powerless, we have to understand their needs, speak to and with them in a language mutually understandable, and create narratives in which they can both identify themselves and the conditions through which power and oppression bear down on their lives. Loyola is a place to tell your truth. At Loyola, you'll reflect on your truth will be challenged, and you will reimagine your truth through a lens of social justice, conviction, and courage. Thank you.